Assalamu alaikum. This is an overview of the Arabic language for those of you considering learning Arabic. First, a little bit about myself. As you may have guessed, I am not Arab, but you'll see everything else on my channel is content in Arabic. So I started learning Arabic during my junior year in college when I did study abroad in Jordan, and then later lived in Egypt for 4 years, Jordan for 2 more, and finally Algeria for 3 years. A lot of that was in my current job as a US diplomat. But before I joined the State Department, I taught Arabic in the US, first at Middlebury College in their summer immersion program, and then year-round at Tufts and then Harvard University. So I can give you the perspective both of having learned Arabic as a non-native speaker, and more specifically, one starting as an adult, and then also give you some advice based on my 6 years of experience teaching Arabic to American college students. So now on to an overview of Arabic, and I'm assuming here that you have zero or close to zero background yourself, but you want to know more about what is the 5th or 6th most commonly spoken language in the world. First off, Arabic is characterized by what linguists call diglossia. I hate fancy linguistic terminology that doesn't really clarify anything for you, but what this means is that modern standard Arabic is the language that you'll hear on newscasts and you'll always read in newspapers and most forms of literature, but this is not actually anyone's native language. So nobody grows up speaking this very formal register with their family and friends. Instead, native speakers of Arabic typically speak one of the dialects at home and then learn MSA, Modern Standard Arabic, at school. But how fluently Arabs themselves speak MSA will depend mainly on their education. So if you only learn this formal MSA, this formal Arabic, you might be able to communicate with most educated Arabs, but you probably won't understand what they're saying back to you, and definitely wouldn't understand them as they normally talk to another native speaker from their own country, because that would be in dialect. You do definitely still see the dialects in written form, because this has become increasingly accepted in literature over the past few decades. But you'll see it most consistently on social media, when people are texting each other, because people are more comfortably expressing themselves in the dialect they speak at home rather than in MSA, which is much more formal. So which should you learn? If you want to learn Arabic, should you start with Modern Standard Arabic or one of the dialects or both at the same time? The answer to that really depends on what you want to do with your Arabic and also how much time you can dedicate to it. If you're married to an Arab and your only goal is to have a conversation with your mother-in-law, or at least understand her when she's cursing at you, then you definitely only need the dialect for that particular country. And if you're planning a trip, the trip of a lifetime to Egypt, and you want to be able to haggle in the souk in Arabic, again, go for a dialect, in this case, Egyptian Arabic. The dialects generally are not very interchangeable unless they're geographic neighbors. What I mean is if you're traveling to Lebanon or Jordan, then it's absolutely fine if you study Syrian Arabic, which is quite similar to the dialect in both countries. But if you're going further afield to Egypt or especially North Africa, you would still be understood, but again, you would really have trouble understanding what people around you are saying or what they're saying back to you. But for instance, when I was teaching Arabic at Harvard University, I was teaching almost entirely in Modern Standard Arabic because the program there was built around training graduate students to be literate so they could read Arabic texts. And also, if you're a non-Arab Muslim and your goal is to be able to read and understand the Quran, likewise, you'll want MSA or Classical Arabic. I won't get right now into the difference between these two in this video, but suffice to say that learning a dialect like Moroccan Arabic is going to be of very little direct value to you for that purpose. One other benefit of studying MSA is that you can always make yourself understood to Arabic speakers. Granted, you might sound very awkward and formal, And again, you won't understand what's being said back at you in most situations, but you can make yourself understood. But what should you do if your goal is bigger and you want to become completely fluent as a non-native speaker of Arabic? In that case, I would argue you really have to learn both MSA and a dialect, because otherwise you'll either sound illiterate if you don't know MSA, or else you'll be unable to function like a normal human being. For instance, when you want to go order a falafel sandwich or get your mobile phone fixed and you're using this very formal language. For myself, I started off learning exclusively modern standard Arabic in the classroom during my 6 months studying abroad in Jordan. I had literally zero classroom exposure to Jordanian dialect. I think I'd been there 3 months when another American student came to us, a classmate of mine, and was like, guess what? I found out how Jordanians say I want. And we were all like, what do you mean? It's uridu. And she's like, no, 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 they say biddi. And we were just, mind blown, because that's not even a verb, and like we had no idea. So that being said, I don't really mind that I was able to build a strong basis in MSA before learning a dialect. In my opinion, it is definitely easier to go from MSA and then start learning dialects, because the dialects are all more or less grammatically simplified compared to formal Arabic than the other way around. So students I had who started off with dialect, even if they were really good at the dialect, often struggled a lot in MSA because the grammar is so much more complicated and they just didn't really see the point to it as much. But anyways, I did pick up tiny bits of Jordanian dialect during my 6 months there. But basically, I only knew intermediate Arabic, intermediate MSA, until I went and moved to Egypt right after college. I was lucky enough to find a family to live with in a village for a year, and that will certainly force you to learn the language, and more specifically, a dialect. Doing immersion any way you can is the best way to learn a language, and Arabic is no exception to that. I can do a separate video on this if there's interest, but just to keep it brief, I would advise you to avoid countries where English is the lingua franca more so than Arabic, and that includes much of the Gulf. Arabic language teaching has been evolving since I was in college, and now in US universities, it is common to have at least some dialect included in the curriculum. And I do think that's important to include, because otherwise students can have this incredibly frustrating experience where they study MSA in the US for 2, 3, 4 years, and they think they're getting pretty good. And then they actually go to the Arab world for the first time and discover they're basically unable to communicate with the taxi driver taking them from Cairo airport to downtown. So, students in that situation sometimes feel like they've completely wasted their time, and it can turn them off from Arabic. So I do think, at a bare minimum, some survival dialect is absolutely necessary. While the more forward-leaning Arabic programs in the US, like the University of Texas, do incorporate mainstream dialects like Egyptian and Syrian from day one, teaching dialect is still a divisive subject that Arabic teachers themselves will sometimes disagree about. The more, I guess you could say, old school teachers who are native speakers tend to prefer MSA in the classroom. Part of that is because it's seen as the higher or more pure form of the language. And of course, it's what they themselves were taught in the classroom in the Arab world. If you're an Egyptian kid going to school in Cairo, they're going to teach you MSA because Egyptian Arabic is already what you use all the time at home and what you're speaking with your friends and family, so you don't need to study it. The second point about Arabic is the root system. And this is a really cool aspect of Arabic. Once you wrap your head around it and start picking up vocabulary, it could really help you guess the meaning of unknown words. So let's start with a basic verb, kataba, meaning he wrote, which is the verb's simplest form. Once you see the 3 consonants, kataba, in that order, you can be pretty sure that the meaning of any word is somehow related to writing. So if someone tells you that he works as a katib, that's a person who does whatever the root meaning is. You can guess it's going to be a writer, or it can be a clerk. And then for the location where X takes place, where writing takes place, you can talk about a mekteb or a mektaba. See how the kataba root is still there in both of these words in that order. So now let's switch roots and look at darasa. Darasa. So see if you can guess what the underlying root means when I give you this word, because there is some word that you should already know. Madrasa. Remember how mektaba was a place of writing? So a madrasa is a place of what? Madrasa means school, so it's a place of studying. So that's just a quick dars about how to use the Arabic root system. Third, Arabic is really hard. Okay, this is probably a shocker for absolutely no one, that Arabic is really darn hard. The US State Department classifies Arabic as a language which is exceptionally difficult for native English speakers. Arabic, Chinese, Korean, and Japanese are the 4 languages in the world that get this designation. And the State Department gives diplomats 2,200 hours of instruction to be able to become proficient in Arabic, compared to only 600 hours to reach the same level of proficiency for a language like Spanish or French. So it's basically 2 years of Arabic in a row. If you're coming from a language which is grammatically related to Arabic, the closest one being Hebrew, or shares a lot of vocabulary with it, like Farsi or Turkish, then you've got a head start. But for an American who only speaks English, Arabic is just about the hardest language in the world to learn. Why is it so hard? 3 reasons. 1, the diaglossia that I mentioned earlier. You can spend months or years becoming proficient in one of the dialects, and then you turn your attention to MSA and discover that, well, you're not starting from 0, but you still have a huge amount of new vocabulary and grammar to learn. So the grammar and sentence structure are different enough from English that even if you know the vocabulary, a word for word translation is a total mess. And then the third reason it's so hard, pronunciation. Arabic has a lot of letters that are very difficult for English speakers. Specifically, I would say that there are maybe 10 letters that Americans tend to struggle mightily with. It seems kind of unfair because in English we only have 1 letter that's tough for Arabic speakers, which is P. Differentiating between P and B is tricky for some Arabs, especially Egyptians. So there's no reciprocity there. But for each of those 10 letters, in my experience, Americans butcher these the most. First is qaf. You'll see this transliterated as a Q. Try clucking like a chicken. Bak, bak, bak. Now take that sound at the end and use that. Qahwa, qahwa, which is a word that came into English from Arabic originally. It's coffee. If you really can't make this sound, you can also just pronounce it as a g, like a G, and try to claim that you're speaking with a Bedouin accent. So gahwa instead of qahwa. Second one, kha. Kha is a guttural sound made by constricting the throat and expelling air. It's in my Arabic name, Khalid. So also you hear it in a sheikh mat. The sheikh died, which entered into English as checkmate in chess, coming into Arabic from Persian or Farsi. And then the third letter, rounding out the top 3, we have ayn, which you make by constricting your throat while voicing the letter. It's definitely the letter that I still struggle with occasionally, even after 23 years of Arabic studies. So, having a room full of American students all trying to say this letter at the same time, sounds like a flock of distressed sheep. But one loan word from Arabic which has this letter is average. So average originally came from the Arabic word awar, which refers to defective or damaged goods, which is a meaning that the derived word still has in Italian and French, but then the meaning kind of evolved when it passed into English after some trade in the Mediterranean area. So hopefully you've enjoyed this quick overview of Arabic. It's my first video that's been in English and about Arabic rather than in Arabic. So let me know if you'd like to see more like this. Thank you and ma'a salama. There's that ayin again.